With introduction of node.js, the space around JavaScript is getting richer day by day, and more libraries are being added day by day to the npm registry. Here are some of the basic interview questions asked. So, what is node.js? Node.js is a server-side scripting mainly written on Google V8 engine. It is mainly and widely used for web application, distributed system, event-based I/O like file reading, writing, and calling REST APIs. Why we use Node.js? We use Node.js generally because it is very fast and it is asynchronous in nature due to its non-blocking I/O, which never or almost never blocks. And on the top of this, it is single-threaded. What is event loop? Event loop is one of the most commonly asked questions in JavaScript and even in Node.js. So here we had a simple function which calls another function like fun1, and then fun1 calls internally another function which is fun2. So if you take the call stack, in that you can see that first the main will be pushed, then function1 will be pushed, then function2, and then console.log will be pushed. Then after that, once this is done, it will be popped out, and then function1 will be popped out, then function2 will be popped out, and then function main will be popped out. But in case of REST API, what it does it like main, then function1, function2, console.log, and then REST API. So REST API or any AJAX call, so which will take time, like event-based I/O also, like file reading, writing, set timeout, or like DOM click, load. So all these are asynchronous calls. So what happens if we wait for something like on click, I want something to be fetched from the database, and suppose the server is not available or it is taking like 2 minutes of time or like 5 minutes for me to get and fetch the data from the database. So suppose I clicked something, then the browser got hanged. So it will not be a good user experience. And since JavaScript is a single threaded, what it does it like once you click it, it makes an asynchronous call and it sends from the main call stack, it sends it to the web API call stack. So there all this asynchronous call has been done and it doesn't take care like when it gets finished or something. So once it is completed, everything has been pushed to the callback queue. So here like all those return statement like promises, then we had callback, then async-await, all which is been done or completed has been pushed to callback queue. And then there comes the picture of event loop. So event loop will keep on looking for the main call stack. So if the main call stack is free, then in that case event loop will go and check callback queue and pick it up on priority or on like first come first serve, whatever it is defined by JavaScript engine. It will take it and then it will push those piece of code to be run by main engine. So after that the REST API call will be executed. Now there is another important question comes in JavaScript or Node.js is like what is callback? So callback is a higher order function, like we pass it in another function so that we can wait for any asynchronous call to get finished. And once it is done, like the REST API is being called and it return me the data in JSON format or whatever format like XML format, and I want to process it. So I need to wait for that data to return. So in that case we use callback. So what is error fast in callback? So error fast in callback is like once we call the callback function, in that we are expecting or we will be processing the error first, then we will be processing whatever the data or the return the callback returned. So in that case, suppose I am reading the file. So after the file is being read like food.txt, so I will get a buffer. Even for the REST API like request.post or request.get, we give the path for the URL and then we had the function. So in that function we first check if there is any error. So here the error is first checked, and then if there is like 500 error or the file is not found, then we just return from that function, and if the error is null, then we proceed with the data or we perform all the business operations or business logic which we need to do on top of this data. What is promises? So promises is also another higher order function where we either resolve it or reject it. So if I call a REST API and the REST API returns 200 with some data, then in that case I will resolve it, and whichever function is calling that REST API, there I will use .then, and inside .then I will get the response code and the results whatever the data is there. And suppose that REST API returned like 500 or 404 not found, so in that case I will be rejecting that request. So I'll give like reject and that error code or whatever the error message I have received from the REST API, and then in the calling method it will be .catch, and I will get all the message which has been rejected. So inside reject whatever the message has been passed, I will get the same thing in .catch. So it's like function .then the resolved message and or .catch the exception message or the reject message. So why to use promise instead of callback? So main difference between a callback and a promise is like if it is in hierarchical order, like inside one callback I am calling another REST API which is another callback, then after the second REST API returns I am using their data and then I am processing it to write in a file. And on each callback I need to maintain the error messages, like if something is failed on REST API then don't perform, if something is failed on the second REST API then don't perform, if the file is not found in the third callback. So there are multiple hierarchies and the code doesn't look good, so it becomes very much messy. So in order to avoid all this we can use promise. So how we can use promise is like in promise we can use like promise then call the first REST API, then then we get the response, then that response is passed to the second promise method, and then we can use again then, and with this again then we get the result from the second REST API, and then we pass that to our third promise method, and there we use then, and at the end we can use only one catch block. So if it fails in the first promise it will be handled by that catch block, if it is failed in the second promise it will be handled in the last catch block. So there is only one catch block we can use in promise method, and that makes the code a little bit or more neat and clean. So what is async and await? So Async-await is similar to promise. Async function also returns a promise method, but it is implemented from ECMAScript 7, and with Async-await we can wait for any asynchronous call to get finished, so it will wait in that line. Okay, let's come to something for Node.js. So what is npm in Node.js? So npm is a repository or the registry for all the packages. So all the repositories like we use for Express.js, then Mongoose and all has been put in npm. It's like Maven for Java. What is module.exports? So before Node.js, JavaScript doesn't have the ability to group, encapsulate and deuse other piece of code from another file. So developer use CommonJS to tell Node.js which piece or bit of function or code or object to export from a given file, so that other file can access that piece of code and reuse its functionality. What is TypeScript? So TypeScript is not a language. It is basically used for programmers and developer to abide by some rules. Like in Java we had object oriented, even in .NET also we had object oriented programming. So in JavaScript we don't have that concept. So to bring in that concept or to push it or bake object oriented programming in JavaScript, we use TypeScript. So it gives the feel of like I am using, suppose, my name. So name should be of type string, then my age, it should be of type number, or I am calling some person like new person, then that person should be of some type which is called person, who should have some characteristics. Then I should have that setter and getter method to fetch all those details. So to abide by those rules we use TypeScript. But the Node.js or even the browser doesn't understand anything apart from JavaScript. So there are libraries which internally takes care to convert those TS or the TypeScript file to JavaScript file. It is mainly to detect compile time errors, not in the runtime. So suppose I defined in some function that it should accept number, and instead of number I am passing some strings. Like I passed, means in sum I have 2, 5, and then I am returning 7, and This is while writing the code, and suppose after the compilation is done and instead of passing 2,5 I am passing in quotation 2 and in quotation 5, so that is like string. So in that case JavaScript will not throw any error because it doesn't understand what is the type. So TypeScript is basically used to detect compile time errors, not runtime. What is JSLint and ESLint? So JSLint is like if you want to check like all the lines is been formatted well, then there is proper semicolon at the end of each functions, each line. Then if you have used triple equals to for combining or matching two strings or two numbers, for this we use JSLint. Similarly, ESLint used for TypeScript to give some constraints, like if you are declaring some name and if you didn't define it, like you defined it like any, so in that case ESLint will throw error. So you should not define anything any means like it can be a number, it can be a string, it can be an object. So you should define something particular to that variable, like name should be equals to string, and ESLint is mainly used for TypeScript linting only. So what are the plugins used to write unit test cases in Node.js? So plugins or libraries which we use to write Node.js unit test cases are mocha, chai and sinon. These are the primary things which we use for writing unit test cases in Node.js. So you have mentioned that mocha, chai and sinon. So what are those things? So mocha is an test runner and chai is an assertion library, and sinon is particularly used for stubbing, mocking or spying on any function or any method. Then what is Jest? Jest is another test framework developed by Facebook. So do you know any other testing framework used in Node.js or JavaScript? Yeah, there are a lot of testing frameworks like Jasmine, Karma, Cypress, then we have our famous Protector. So how can we get the code coverage in Node.js unit test cases? So we can use the plugins like Istanbul, JS coverage, Blanket, then Karma coverage. Though Karma coverage internally uses Istanbul only, and if you see the popularity of Blanket and JS coverage in npm registry, so you can see that the weekly download is like 14,000 for Blanket and 5,000 for JS coverage. And if you check the same weekly download for Istanbul, it would be in lakhs. Interested in more Node.js interview questions? Then let me know by clicking this eye icon. I will keep these two questions unanswered. What will be the output of these two questions? Let me know in the comment section. Coding is superpower.